Good evening, everyone, and good morning in Western Europe. How is everyone? Richard, how are things, mate? We were just talking earlier together, me and Paul and Richard. So, yeah, I managed to scoff down the little piggy. So, yeah, that was fast eating, trying to get all that bacon down. I didn't manage the whole lot. I left probably about 150 grams. I shoved that into the fridge. I got coffee as well. Yeah, I managed to do the coffee, the laundry, all that as we were talking. So, bloody hell, mad rush to the finish and still 10 minutes late. But anyway, not many people here. Where is everyone? It's like in the morning one, everybody rushed in right at the minute. Oh, he's got a live stream today. Have you been sleeping under a rock or something, you guys? Anyway, yes, we had that late thing. Definitely coffee time. G'day, Tracy. Yips. Tom, always a pleasure. Aaron. Oh, you're off the coffee. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I've been off the coffee and all that. Doesn't make much difference for me in that regard. So, but I clear out a coffee 5 times faster because I've got those genes that can actually detoxify caffeine, alcohol, and a few other things, and a couple of medications. And so I can have coffee late at night, 9 o'clock, still get to bed and sleep fine. It's just genetics. Blame my ancestors. Anyway, but if it's causing issues like Bart was causing him blood pressure issues, other people are causing some other issues. So, yeah, it's just not meant to be. Just not meant to be. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, mate, for the Euros. Anyway, reminder for people to check the live chat. Top chat settings at the top of the chat window. Yes, exactly. Only subscribers welcomed. And do hit the like button as you're coming in. Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. Thank you for the €4. And Anika, good to have you here. Necro Kitty, very nice for you to be here. They left because you were late. Okay. Can't help that. I was trying to get my laundry done. I was talking to Richard and Paul on Zoom. I was trying to get my laundry done. I was trying to get food scoffed down my throat, get my coffee done, and go for a pee. So it was like a mad rush. And I said to the boys, I've got 10 minutes to do all this, these last final parts. They go, no, it's not going to happen. I'm not blaming you, Richard. Definitely not blaming you. I'm blaming myself for basically staying on the Zoom or speaking to my sister for her birthday a bit too long and running out of time. But, people can always waltz back. We are here. We're not going anywhere. So if they want their questions answered, they'll have to wait a fortnight otherwise. So shit happens. Blackie. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it can be a problem. Sometimes you may have to, I was supplementing also, not only doing the food grade citric acid stuff, but I was also doing B6 supplementation and a bit more taurine because it does deplete sulfur, and B6 does help break it down. So, if you're having too much, do consider a B6 supplement. They're not that expensive, and it will help with breaking down oxalate. Yeah, look, it's just the way it is. It's there's specific genetics that determine that, and my ancestors in the Mediterranean, Middle East, people of that region consumed a lot of coffee, and people over multiple generations for a very, very long time. So it means that the caffeine compounds, have been in our diet for thousands of years. For Greeks, Italians, people in the Middle East, to a larger extent. There are some Europeans that do as well, but yeah, yes. And Tracy's reminding me about the song Taurine, Taurine, Taurine. Yes, we love Tracy. Oh, yeah, look, it's a contraindicated beverage, which we all love. I'm in the same boat. I'm not going to sit here and actually say, oh, it's great. Yeah. Somebody, I know that people, it does have nice, and it does have a few redeeming factors, but there's a lot of non-redeeming factors as well. So let's just be honest about it. We just like it. It's a low carb cheat, basically. Okay, nah. So let's not sugarcoat it anymore. Never would, Richard, never would. I take responsibility for my own lateness. I just wanted to explain to people why I was, because there was a lot of things happening at the same time that I was trying to juggle. And yes, I realized I couldn't do that. Yeah, it was 1 pound, half a kilo of bacon, and I was just trying to cut half a kilo of bacon and scoff it down at the same time. It's actually easier to scoff like a steak. You can cut large pieces and yeah, but bacon is just, you have to cut it into so many pieces. Yeah, it's just, you don't realize how long it takes to eat bacon compared to just regular meat. Yes. So if you ever get into a competition, don't use bacon, use regular meat, because you can actually scoff down. Probably the fish would be white fish would be the fastest stuff to scoff down as protein. Yeah. Yep, fair enough. That's good. If you're responding in the positive way, yeah. G'day, Jenny. Black Himalayan salt, good source of sulfur. I like it in my coffee. In your coffee? Okay, that's interesting. Salt in your coffee. Yeah, I've heard of other people doing salt in their coffee, and and I don't know. I'm a bit of a purist. I like coffee the way it is. It's just me. Yeah, I use cream. I don't really like using milk that much. At work, I have to, but I prefer using cream at home. No, Necrokitty. I never had salty coffee anywhere, any time in my life. Yeah, anyway. I'm a purist when it comes to coffee. Traditional. Look, sometimes certain things, people think compounds in combination affect people very differently. It's just the way it is. We just have to, once you get to the ideal level you want to, then, you may occasionally have it now and then as a treat. There's nothing wrong with that, but, focus on your goals. And once you get there, yeah, so there's no reason to, make an issue of it. Yes, bacon is nice. Definitely probably one of my favorite forms of piggy is definitely bacon. Yeah, I have to say I really like bacon. If you were to put a piece of a steak, a pork chop and bacon, I'd go for the bacon. Okay, fair enough. Each to their own. I've never actually done it that way. I've never tried salting coffee. I may have to give it a try. For me, I don't have a problem with bitterness. See, I like sour things, and I like things that are savoury. So I can eat a lemon like that. So that doesn't affect me. I actually don't like something being too sweet. That annoys me far more. So, but it'll be interesting to try one. I might give it a go. See just a pinch. Yeah. Nothing wrong with trying it once. Okay, so that's how it acts. Okay. Okay. Different people have different opinions. Okay. A very little, very tiny bit stirred in. Do you put it in before or after? You said in a video that blood pressure meds can cause insulin resistance. Is this true? If yes, don't also cause this? I actually didn't say blood pressure meds. Blood pressure meds actually cause certain derangements in the body. I don't think I actually said insulin resistance. Maybe you heard it from someone else. And if I said it, then I was wrong to say it. Blood pressure meds cause vasodilation, increase nitric oxide and cause vasodilation and affect. But usually people that have got blood pressure problems usually have insulin resistance as well. I may have meant it in that sort of context. And I probably would have said if somebody's got insulin resistance, which is causing blood pressure, which is the complete opposite, like insulin resistance will cause blood pressure, but blood pressure will not cause insulin resistance. It's the other way around. And what we call insulin resistance is really a construct of the Randall cycle. So the activation of the Randall cycle and increasing, a lot of energy in the bloodstream, and also holding on to, and what happens is this activation causes an increase in insulin, and insulin causes water retention, and this water retention is what actually causes this blood pressure. So it's the reason why we say to people, never do very ketogenic diets for a very long time, because you'll dump your electrolytes, because your blood pressure will drop too low because your insulin has dropped. Got it? So if your insulin is too low, chronically low by fasting or whatever, you'll be dumping electrolytes, you'll be dumping fluids. You lose fluids when you don't have. So in order to prevent fluid loss and electrolyte loss, we tell people to try and eat one big meal a day in order to bump up insulin slightly to actually help in that retention of fluids and electrolytes. But if you have too much of this activated over signaling of insulin, which is basically Randall cycle activation, then yes, that can cause more retention of fluids. And as a consequence, it can actually cause then higher blood pressure. That's why people who, are obese with diabetes and all these sort of diseases on a SAD diet, activating the Randall cycle on a daily basis, they tend to have high insulin signaling, and that insulin signaling and Randall cycle activation that comes from it tends to hold on. It's not the other way around. So it's not blood pressure that causes insulin resistance. It's the construct of insulin resistance that causes blood pressure. So, yeah, the other way around. And that's why when you fast, you lower your insulin, you drop your blood pressure. It's the quickest way to do it. And that's why you have to be very careful if you're on blood pressure meds. If you're taking taurine or fasting or stuff like that, you can have a dramatic drop in your blood pressure, and that can cause you dizziness. And that's why you have to reduce it. If you're going down, go slowly. I don't encourage people on blood pressure meds to do fasting. I like to get their doctor to adjust their meds, up their taurine 2 grams, and slowly increase the taurine, lower that, and achieve a new homeostasis, and then do some fasting to improve that whole side of things. Anyway. Yes. And that isn't medical advice either. It's basically that, the information that taurine and fasting lowers your blood pressure is well established in the literature, in the scientific literature. The whole thing is that you need to then do that other step is to get a doctor, physician that can help you adjust your meds down or to nothing if they're at a low setting. So you can actually use a different approach which can achieve the same results without the deleterious side effects. Anyway, what's Tom asking? I was talking to a person in Discord about what you have called a vegetarian carnivore in the latest video. Does it have any potential negatives, and how does it compare to other versions? A standard carnivore diet, eating all animal foods, is going to be superior to any other thing. This is a sort of an option for people that are unwilling to eat red meat. I would rather have people gravitate to a sort of a vegetarian carnivore diet. They're going to be much more optimal than what they would be on a standard diet or a plant-based diet. That's all it is. This is not a recommendation for the general carnivore community. This is for people that are wanting to leave the veganerized community, the vegan, vegetarian community, and want options. That's all it is. It's an option. It's an option. How do I not go complete carnivore, and how do I get out of a community? If you can get them to becoming vegetarian carnivore, then, which is sort of one of those idiotic words that I've, you could say slogans or whatever you want to call it, or naming conventions that I've come up with. It's not meant to be, some sort of, magical, superior sort of. It's just some bullshit, name that I came up with. But it's really to provide something for a community of people in transition from a plant-based diet that wants something where they feel mentally comfortable to move towards. You could call it white meat carnivore. You could call it a lot of things. That's true. You could call it non-red meat carnivore. The reason why I use this sort of emotive language, vegetarian carnivore, was deliberate. It's a ploy on my part. It's sort of saying to the plant-based community, you've got an option. You don't have and feel less guilty. You can come across to the carnivore space in a different way. That's what, once you get them over and being vegetarian carnivore, where they're consuming dairy, seafood, and eggs, it's much easier for them to transition to the next step over time. The biggest obstacle that a lot of these people find is actually leaving that space completely. Sometimes they have friends and people, and they're bullied by saying, oh, look, I'm vegetarian, but I'm only eating vegetarian foods. It's easier for them to be able to combat family members, a partner, friends that are very close friends that are, part of the plant-based community. So let's say it's a way of saying to people that are desperate to get out, but are fearful of getting out, of losing their friends, family, and many other things. I'm giving those people an option. That's all it is, Tom. It's just an option. It's basically let's say, a very, I don't know, some people could call it a devious way to get vegans to leave the vegan diet without suffering consequences from their family and friends. You could call it that. But but at the end of the day, it also is better that they do something like that rather than stay in the veganerized community and suffer more health problems. It's a halfway house. So that's all it is. It's a halfway house. And, so obviously it's not optimal in the way red meat has a lot of nutrients that you're not going to get in a vegetarian carnivore diet. But a vegetarian carnivore diet is going to be a hell of a lot more superior than a plant-based diet. And so it's a halfway house. And if we can negotiate people towards that halfway house, we're making some progress on the human front. It's not all about, us versus them. There are humans involved here, and we need to be caring about other humans. As an Orthodox Christian, I take that as an important responsibility on my part to care about these people. I don't, turn my back on them. I give them options. I try to help them transition. You're not going to get everyone coming across to a carnivore diet. So you have to be a bit, let's say, flexible in a sense, give them options to be able to transition away from that misanthropic lifestyle and diet, So it's a halfway house, if you want to call it that. So I've dubbed it this way to make it attractive. If you call it white meat carnivore, that's not going to make it attractive. Calling it a vegetarian carnivore diet is attractive to them. We're trying to, I don't want to even call it pescatarian. Not interested. I want to call it basically a vegetarian carnivore diet. It's emotive, Tracy. I'm trying to touch emotion here. People do things, food, the choices that people make in some cases, they can be tied to a lot of emotion, family relationships and whatever else. So we have to be a bit more skillful and tactful the way we go about it. By promoting something like that to people of that option, here's an option to move away from a pure plant-based diet. It's giving them, let's say, a way out without losing friends and without having to, take on the insanity of the other vagoons in their, that they're related to or have relationships. It's hard for some people. Some people, sometimes it's your partner. Yeah, we could all call that ovo-lacto pescatarian. That's what it really is. But my sort of, is to use the word vegetarian because it's a play on words. Yeah, that's all it is. That's all it is, Tracy. That's exactly what it is. Offering a path to better health. It's all I'm trying to do. If somebody can come up with a better name, with a better sort of thing, yeah, fine. Because to say, oh, why don't you go over lacto pescatarian, it doesn't resonate. But saying vegetarian carnivore, it really goes, what do you mean? You can do actually a vegetarian carnivore? People are going, what? What is this? Obviously, it's a over lacto pescatarian, but it sounds, well, it even sounds exactly. It also sounds clinical. And remember, these people are being brainwashed with all the science and all this sort of stuff. So we have to use that sort of language. Okay, yeah. My sister uses quite a bit of salt. She does, I think, in milk as well. My youngest sister, that is, Susie. So not my oldest sister, my youngest. Nathan. Pavel, how are you, mate? If you wouldn't have access to dairy, which one would you choose? Eggshell powder or bone powder? Whatever you can get. If it's between the two, I'd probably go for bone powder. But if you can't get it, I'd go for the other one. Doesn't really matter if you were trying to, get the calcium if you require because of genetics. I know what you're talking about. Okay. Hello, how are you, mate? Anyway, I don't care about glucose ketones. But on my fourth day of a fast, I had glucose 2.2 and ketones 7.2. Decided to end the fast through. I was fine, just colder than usual. Were those numbers worrying? Not really. I mean, it's probably very low on the glucose side, but there are some people, due to certain genetics, that will actually have I forget what it is now. There's a specific enzyme that's an intermediate in the gluconeogenic sort of conversion, and it's some people it slightly doesn't work as well, and so as a consequence they tend to produce much less endogenous glucose, and so the body compensates by producing more ketones. That's fine. You're still going to be using the stuff, so I wouldn't get too worried about it. Remember, there were experiments done in the past. Cahill actually did those experiments where he put people into ketosis through fasting and then infused massive amounts of insulin to force glucose down to even lower numbers than that. None of them passed out. None of them had a problem. But the most critical thing about, in your case, if you can't generate sufficient glucose and you tend to basically really have these low numbers, you never in your case stop a fast with glucose. That could cause you a lot of problems. So you always go into, you have animal foods, a fatty food, in particular animal foods or dairy fat or something like that. You want to avoid taking carbohydrates if you've got such low, because you don't want to end up hypoglycemic, so that's the key thing. Because your ketones, once you get introduced food, your ketones drop quite a bit. And if you can't generate quick enough, to maintain glucose levels, then you could potentially go into severe hypoglycemia if you've got those genetics. So you've got to be very careful when you come out. Make sure you're coming out from your fast with fat, not any glucose, zero glucose of all sources, or close to zero anyway, is the thing. You're welcome. What could be causing intolerance to salt? I had to give up salt completely because it's causing bloating, loose stools, and excessive thirst. It shouldn't actually be doing that, because loose stools, low salt actually causes loose stools. And excessive thirst usually also comes from not enough salt. Bloating, it's interesting. I'm not sure, actually. No, I'm really not sure. I'll look into it. Ask me next time. Leave a comment. Because mostly, what you do is fluids in the colon are actually, when you've got sufficient salt, it actually reduces the fluids in the colon. So you don't end up with loose stools in that regard. So that's sort of the opposite in that regard. Salt isn't something that causes bloating. The only other thing that I can think of is potentially candida and potentially things like H. pylori and stuff like that can really cause some derangements. But I've never heard about causing thirst. That's a different one. They don't cause thirst. They cause some of these other symptoms, but not thirst. Bloating they can cause loose stools, but not excessive thirst. The only thing that I can think of is you're not fat adapted. that because excessive thirst would come about because you can't generate internal water. I don't know why you can't generate internal water. I think you've asked me something in regards to this before, and I think that you may have some sort of severe mitochondrial issue, because a lot of the symptoms you seem to have are really a derangement of energy production. I don't know what your diet was like in the past, what you were doing, but you may need to consider deuterium depleted water, and you may need to consider a slightly different approach to what you're doing currently. So send me an email with all your symptoms and stuff like that you've had, a bit of history and stuff like that, so I can gauge exactly what is going on. Because some of these symptoms, just the only thing that I can think of, I've known people that have got deranged mitochondria and do not produce enough energy and have inability to produce enough water. There's a lot of reverse Krebs cycle in their system. There's a lot of mayhem. And what you're describing, all these contradictory type symptoms, because salt does some of the opposites of these things, and that's not what it's supposed to do in some regards. So there are definitely issues there, because you've gone close to, eliminating. You have to go all the way down to eliminating salt before you can actually arrest some of the thirst. So that's, a small amount of salt shouldn't be doing that. There's something else that's at play here, and it seems like there's some sort of derangement. So I need more information. So send me an email with more information so I can investigate it a bit in that regard. The other option is you can also consult with Barkay to look into it and maybe get him getting you to do certain tests as well. Because some of these people have got deals with companies where they can actually get tests at a certain discount and stuff like that. I don't do consultancies, so I don't have any of that sort of setup at all to be able to do those sort of things for you, or tell you where to go, or give you a discount code to be able to access some of these services. So, but do send me an email with some detailed information. What you've been doing, what you were doing before, how many years, the sort of symptoms, the transitional symptoms and all that, so I can get a bit of a gauge, and also your background. I think yours is somewhere in Southeast Asia, so give me a bit of a background, your racial background, so I can actually, maybe there's certain genetics as well at play that I know certain racial groups have more than others. So I need to be able to profile you sufficiently to be able to make a determination, both on a genomics, which is just genetic base, and past and present dietary and lifestyle practices. That will help me more to be able to come up with something a bit better for you. The more I know, the more I can assess. I had two people asking me for help. One got onto oxbile and taurine and now aggressively pulling bits of black sand. Probably. Yeah, I think they are dumping gallbladder stones and sludge. I'd say sludge as well. Yeah. So, look, sometimes you just have to put up with it. I had a sludge, for quite some time, on and off, and it was very annoying as well. And it looks a bit sandy as well. So, yeah. So if they have those sort of things, they just something you have to get. As Bart says, you can either do it slowly or you can do it aggressively and get over it. Sometimes the aggressive way is a different way. I notice Alex say it sounds like you're not digesting fat. Yeah, that's a possibility. That's why I said H. pylori and candida can actually really derange the gut and the stomach. So he may not be be able to. So he may need to consider. But before I make a final determination, Alex, I need to have more details from him. And sometimes that somebody may not want to provide all that information to the general world either. Understandable privacy concerns. Anyway, did what? I don't know. Yeah, look at at the time when it's happening to you, you don't feel fantastic. But you have to remember that oxalate, cancer and oxalate are very well associated, and cancers can actually produce a bit more oxalate as well. So, an oxalate can be very damaging to cells, and so I always sort of remind people that it's easy to basically say, well, I don't want to do this or that or whatever, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be unpleasant. You can either do it as slow unpleasant or fast unpleasant. What do they say? It's sort of like, how much can you tolerate? it's sort of, and it's a personal and it's a personal preference. I usually say to people, if you can tolerate a bit more, but it's not an easy thing for people to sort of do. But at the same time, if you get through a dumping, you will ultimately feel much better. Let's put it that way. You will definitely feel way better than if you actually have to put up with sort of the ultimate effects in terms of your body and all that. Anyway, yeah, enough said about that. Thanks. Thank you. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, I will stop fasting for now. Yeah, look, I don't recommend people constantly fast. That's not a good idea. Not very healthy. Doing some fasting is something. Doing excessive can be a problem. Because I'm more tired on fasting since I used minoxidil. What kind of derangement does blood pressure meds cause? Are you taking blood pressure meds while you're actually fasting? Oh, yeah, that's probably, yeah. I think you need to speak to your doctor, Blackie. Yeah, fasting while taking, because fasting lowers your blood pressure. No wonder you felt tired and you felt really sluggish. You were forcing your blood pressure down, and fasting itself lowers insulin, so drops electrolytes and drops. You may have been running a much lower blood pressure, and that's not very, that can be risky, especially with blood pressure meds, because you can actually drop much lower than what physiologically would happen on somebody doing fasting. So yeah, I mean, if you're on a carnivore diet and you've actually moved, you should be basically trying to get off blood pressure meds, and you should test yourself. And I would basically get the doctor to lower my blood pressure meds to half, and then half again, and then get rid of them, and just put a bit of taurine in. Don't do any fasting. Just put in some taurine and actually bring your blood pressure down with the taurine, and then get off those meds completely. And then you can freely do your own fasts and take a bit of extra taurine, because you may still have some endothelial dysfunction, which if you've still got some endothelial dysfunction, you can't actually vasodilate as well, and that can affect blood pressure if there's what is called arterial stiffness. So if you've got arterial stiffness because you've got a whole lot of your past diet caused you a lot of damage to your blood vessels, and they are now full of plaquing, and which is full of collagen, and that's created some level of stiffness, that can be an issue. Now, over time, in a low inflammatory state, that will clear up, like I did for me over a decade, and but you can actually also reduce your blood pressure by two other ways. One is with L-citrulline, and the other one is, so you take a couple of grams of L-citrulline every day, which helps vasodilate your arteries and lower the blood pressure. And also you can take taurine, which also regulates all the fluids, and it's a natural calcium channel blocker as well, taurine, and it will actually lower your blood pressure and bring it to normal and normalize it in a sense. So that's the best approach. That's the species appropriate way to do it, Blackie, and get off these sort of medications that cause a lot of side effects as well in the long run. Yeah, no wonder you're feeling crappy if you're taking blood pressure meds with fasting. God, you don't need to. You should have not taken any blood pressure meds while you were fasting. Completely not, because your blood pressure drops. So yeah, that's where some of your derangements or the way you were feeling were coming from, because you're trying to do two things at the same time. It's, yeah. And I don't really know this drug. I don't really know what it does either, its pharmacokinetics. I'd have to look into it to understand exactly what it is, in a sense. So just let me know, is it a calcium channel blocker or some other type of category of, because there's a lot of names, and in different countries they use different names, and I just don't know all of them. I know some of them, but not all of them. So just tell me whether it's a calcium channel blocker and all that. If it's a calcium channel blocker, you got to be very careful with taurine, especially with calcium channel blockers. The other is a bit easier to deal with, but yeah, if it's a calcium channel blocker, I usually advise people don't go over 2 grams and use L-citrulline to lower blood pressure over time, and then get the doctors to change the meds and bring them down and then get rid of them, because you can't really go much higher with taurine. If you've got a calcium channel blocker, you can get all sorts of strange derangements. Yes, that's the basic thing, offering them a path away from the vagunarized madness. Okay, so it actually helps with alopecia as well, Aaron. Okay, so they use it for both, topical, so on the outside. So it's also used for dual purposed. Okay, yeah. Let me just check to see, is it a calcium channel blocker? Okay, high blood pressure and pattern hair loss. Okay, for the treatment. Okay, is minoxidil, whatever, a calcium channel blocker? Calcium channel blockers include. So it's actually a direct vasodilator. That makes sense, because if you're trying to get vasodilation in the hair follicles, yeah, it wouldn't be a calcium channel blocker. So yeah, not a problem with taurine. So it's a direct vasodilator. So it's actually it actually encourages nitric oxide synthesis. Well, citrulline will do that, You don't even need this medication. Just get yourself some citrulline. If that's all it does, you can literally throw that in the bin. I'm not telling you, this is not medical advice, Blackie. Yeah, I used it for beard growth. Yeah, these sort of things are, are problematic, mate. You should not be playing around with medications for, let's say, for vanity purposes. That's dangerous. We need to keep away from all this sort of stuff that causes derangements and side effects. Yeah, please, consider opting out of that sort of stuff, with all its side effects. Best not have the perfect beard and be healthier, so. Well, they may still have things like candida issues. They may have some gut dysbiosis issues still, potentially, which they haven't resolved. They could be also missing a number of bacteria. You don't know what their life environment is like, Necro. Maybe their life environment is one where there's, potentially mold exposure. There could be other issues that are driving some of these things. So it's not only, what you do, is also your environment can actually have deleterious effects. So you should ask them these questions to find out a few more details, exactly what their circumstances are. We should do a funny channel. I thought this was the funny channel. What are you saying, Richard? I'm not funny enough for you. Anyway, God, they don't like my humour, Tracy. It's all word salad, Harry. come from the heart through. Oh yeah, the vegan carnivore salad, Harry. You need a good spanking, my dear. You got a good spanking. You'll probably enjoy it too much. That's the only problem. Yes, I can see the grin on your husband's face right now, because I know what he's like. I can see the grin on his face if he's close by. Nice gentleman. Anyway, Tracy, 30 days no coffee and feels much better. Yes, she does. Not for everyone. Not for everyone. Jonathan's in the house. G'day, Jonathan. How are you, mate? And I heard a practical carnivore on YouTube mention his hair is growing slow on the carny, but it's not brittle. I have the same experience. Nails also. Why will this be? It depends. Some people actually need a certain extra protein. Some people need, like biotin and stuff like that. And if they're not eating eggs or organ meats, they may not be getting enough biotin. So there's a lot of things at play. It's not, they may be under eating protein. So there's a lot of things. Some people require more than others. It's just the way it is. We're not all made the same. I mean, because I've got an underlying sort of, I do over, 2.5 grams, where I usually say that the average person, 2 grams is male, fine, or slightly less, 1.76 to 2. But if you're got European descent and all that, that's the other thing. Yeah, Necro's right about that. MSM also helps, can grow really fast. So I've used MSM as well, and I can tell you, hair, and I don't use it anymore. I've given it to Dad because my hair grows too damn fast and my nails grow too damn fast, and I've had enough of actually having to cough up money to get constant haircuts. So that's the only thing. But yes, it does. MSM, also taurine also helps. So taking high taurine levels also helps with growing hair. Sulfur amino acids in general help because the keratin, sulfur is required to bind the keratin in the hair follicles and in the nails. So in that regard, you may not be getting enough sulfur as well. Good, very good point, Necro. So they're all sort of issues in that regard. So consider those. Are you eating enough eggs, which have got sulfur? Are you doing other things like that? So do consider to put sulfur-rich foods in your diet. You could have other environmental things or oxalate. Other people have oxalate. Other people have environmental things that can deplete sulfur in us. So some people can endogenously produce less sulfur, things like taurine. Some can do better. So there are variations that could be affecting you and other people. So there is a genetic side to things as well. Just keep that in mind. Play around, try a bit extra sulfur, see if it works. If it works, then you've worked out you may have a genetic thing. Mine both. I get both. Yeah, my hair goes nuts as well. It grows like mad. I'm constantly having to cut it, and I'm sick of it. So I know exactly what you feel. Damn costly haircuts in particular, and actually, luckily I've found some barbers. A guy from Syria that's come down from Sydney, and he's really good and competitively priced. So I'm getting a haircut for $25 and saving quite a bit of money. Do you think sleeping position matters? Side versus back, bed versus ground? I would think our ancestors were side sleepers on the ground. It's something I've never really looked into. I've actually seen images of, tribal people. Some people sleeping on their back. Some people sleeping on their side, either side. I have no idea what is ancestral and what isn't, because when you see so many variations, you go, okay, I don't know, whatever. However, people find it comfortable. So I think ultimately, it's, are you sleeping comfortably? I think that's what it is, Aaron. So I know people say, well, they sleep on their side, but I've seen people sleep on their backs. I've seen tribal people create like a bed type thing, which is elevated off the ground to avoid snakes and many other things, and they tend to sleep on their back. So there's a lot of variation. So I'm not going to say one is the best way of sleeping. It's what you feel comfortable, and as long as it's not causing you any posture problems, it's probably fine. The key thing is you'll know if you're getting musculoskeletal issues, pains, or any, and you're trying one way or another. Well, maybe for whatever reason. Because remember, even our bodies, if you look at one human body after another, no human body is exactly alike. There's going to be slight variations in the composition of the body of one person compared to another. So, and these variations can potentially create different pressures on different parts of the body when you're sleeping in a certain position. So I've never been convinced that there is a specific best way of sleeping. I find it sometimes, even myself, I find it far more comfortable sleeping on my back, but I do sometimes sleep on my side as well, and I find that comfortable as well in certain circumstances. Go figure. So, and I know other people that have slept on their sides and had certain issues, and other people on their back that had certain issues, and some people on their stomach don't have issues or have issues. So there are so many variations, and it's really what you feel comfortable with and what it's not causing you any issues. So, yeah. I'll tell you one thing I did. Somebody actually said to me that actual thing, that a paleo guy, that the ancestors slept on their side and stuff like that on the ground and all that. And I actually challenged that person to show me the evidence of that. They couldn't. And the reason why I was a bit mischievous, because I wasn't mischievous, let's be honest, I'd already checked and actually looked at a number, like one of those geographic type, sort of an archaeological stuff and some other stuff, ethnological stuff, where they had images of different tribal people, the way they sat, the way they slept. There were so many variations. I go, I got this guy. And so I let him dig his hole. He dug his hole. And I said, well, can you please provide me the evidence for that argument? He couldn't. So it was funny. I got a bit of a giggle out of it. He felt uncomfortable and walked away. Okay. I can be a bit like that. Especially when the person arrogant and tries to act as if they know. If I don't know something, I haven't researched something, I will not say. This is a problem with these people. They hear some motherhood statement, these paleo motherhood statements. Oh, dairy's going to kill you. This is going to kill you. That. And they just repeat it like parrots. And you go, are you a parrot or a thinking human? And most of them are parrots, not thinking humans. So that is part of the problem with many people. Horace, how are you, mate? Good morning, Harry. Question: how many meals a day are you doing? 2. And how cooked is the meat you consume? It varies from raw to sometimes even well done, depending on the cut. So I have a lot of variations in that. What I do should not determine what other people do, It reduces some nutrients. It enhances other nutrients when you actually cook meat. So it's the reason why 1.5 million years ago we started cooking meat to extract more nutrients. But yep, you may reduce slightly the enzymes. You may reduce some water-soluble vitamins to some extent, but not a lot. It's not like major. So it's not a deal breaker for me in that regard, especially if the animal's fresh. It will have. My key issue is the taurine side, and that's because we don't consume fresh meat that just got killed and then hung up, if you know what I mean. So while tribal people will have a bit of raw meat when they kill the animal and probably cut a bit of a multivitamin organ and hand it around, generally speaking, when they get back to the actual camp, they cook it. So most of the meat gets cooked. Yes, a human parrot. That's true, Nathan. Yes, so I've met many of those. Once you ask certain questions, you put them on the spot, they usually run away. Yeah, plenty of parrots around that have no idea about a lot of things. Yeah, look. The reason why I've always said that there is a taurine issue is because of the hanging up of animals for a number of days, sometimes a number of weeks, and you're losing a lot of the fluids. When you kill an animal and you immediately cook it, you don't lose as many fluids. Now, in places like New Zealand and parts of even Tasmania, most of the animals that I get are freshly slaughtered, 1 or 2 days ago. And it's like Bart as well, freshly slaughtered, not an issue. But if you're in North America in particular, there can be issues there where things can be slaughtered one place, refrigerated for a month, then transported to another city when there's a demand for it, then delivered to a supermarket or to a processing facility, cut up, put into packaging, sent to a supermarket. And so, by the time it gets there, the level of a certain depletion of taurine has gone down. Now, for most people, the taurine that they'll get if they're, most carnivores eat quite a bit of meat. They're getting enough meat protein. They should be getting enough, plus some endogenous stuff that they will produce from methionine and cysteine. And if they're healthy, they're probably okay. Not a big issue. If they're unhealthy, it could become an issue. Where people notice a big thing is when people come from a veganurized diet, they've really got a messed up gut microbiome, a really messed up stomach where they can't generate enough stomach acidity, and then they consume raw meat and it digests better. And why does that happen? Not only the taurine, but the taurine also is inhibiting H. pylori. Because when you've got low stomach acid and you've got H. pylori, it actually increases. It also deranges the proton pumps, which means that taurine re-regulates the proton pumps. So having extra taurine can actually sort out a deranged stomach. I've done videos. If you take a look at my playlist called Digestive Issues, I cover that in one of the videos. So it really is that and so at that stage, as I said, even to Joey, I said, if basically somebody, they can either go for that option, or the other option they can consider is just supplementing until their gut, their stomach, or their digestive system normalizes and gets back to normal. So that's in a deranged state, and so they will get more benefit. But that doesn't mean necessarily that this is the ancestral way, pure raw. That's ridiculous, because for the last 1.5 million years that hasn't been the case, and the majority of humans have been doing that. And even the Inuit, as I pointed out in my recent video, covering that point quite clearly about the carnivore controversies. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out. I do cover about the Inuit and stuff like that, that some people seem to say that they basically only do raw. They don't. They do a lot of cooked stuff as well in the igloos. It's just ignorant people that have got no idea what they're talking about are just coming up with nonsense. But that's normal with certain people that have got certain agendas that they're pushing. So, yeah, that's pretty much it on that point. Lately, I've been able to buy cheap grain-fed pork and cheap eggs. I think that's enough for long run health. Nevertheless, if there's anything to worry about, thank you. Nah, nothing to worry about. Still going to be better. And animals can detox a lot of these things. Glyphosate will break down to glycine, so it's not a big issue. And most other things, it's an issue when you eat plants directly. It's an issue to the gut, and it sort of caused derangements to the gut of the actual the animals in many cases. So it's sort of. Oh, thanks for that, Jonathan, for putting up the carnivore controversies. Thank you for the link. Yeah, so people haven't watched it, go and watch it. Yeah, but I wouldn't get too wound up about those sort of things. It's still going to be superior to eating plants, So, and this sort of organic plants is just bullshit. Most organic plants are being contaminated by all sorts of things, because most of the farms next door are spraying glyphosate and spraying a whole lot of other chemicals, and the wind doesn't discriminate, moves things around. Just because you've got a label doesn't mean it hasn't been that plants have not been exposed. Plus, they're not very good sources of nutrients, and they've got a lot of anti-nutrients. So I'd still go for the grain. It's going to be still superior, and if that's all you can afford, it'll still be way superior than any plant. As I reduce salt to zero, my thirst has reduced to almost zero, and diarrhea stopped. Also, muscle weakness improved a bit. There must be something wrong, but it's difficult to gauge what. Just send me info and I'll look into it. A bit about your background and stuff like that. So I don't want you plastering all here, obviously for privacy reasons. You may not feel comfortable. So thanks, Richard. Appreciate it. Those 15.31 New Zealand pesos. Thanks, mate. Yep. I think we covered that. I remember Homer Simpson had demoxynil for hair growth. Okay. Yes. I think I'd give myself MSM, biotin, that sort of stuff to help with hair growth than some medication. Yeah. Good to have you here, mate. I am good, thank you. That's good to hear. Had some strange hunger signals for lots of protein the last few days. That's normal. I'm back training somewhat after surgery. I suspect that's it. Nah, it's probably also the healing. You need far more protein when you heal. And so your body's starting to say, I need nutrients to build tissue, build enzymes to repair. So you need protein, amino acids, basically, for the transcription of shitloads of little workers that are going to go in there and heal and repair and do all that sort of stuff. So that's normal, and it's also indicated. It's like a lot of like injuries that they've got that are related to the musculoskeletal stuff, including the skin as well, which is a collagen based. They've got a lot of collagen. There again, burn victims, massive amount of eggs. They used to give them in the old days for that purpose, so for healing. So it's definitely a good idea to ramp up the eggs as well, Jonathan. Ramp up the eggs. Get those eggs into you. Nathan, how are you, mate? When it comes to spelling, I can't. I'm very much a stems person rather than a literature person. Not that I don't like reading and stuff like that, yes, but I wouldn't say my grammar is faultless. Bluesman, how are you, mate? Good to have you here. Hairdressers and barbers are people too. Expensive people. G'day, Dom. Oh, thanks, mate. Dom makes a big announcement. I'm here. Appreciate it. Thanks. You back home or are you still in the Middle East somewhere? Oops. Oops. Yep, down here. Wrong one. Started training on the 8th day after surgery. Videos on my channel of my feeble workout. Yeah, take it easy, mate. Don't overdo it. You've just come out of major surgery, remember that. And you're not the Incredible Hulk. Let's put it that way. Even though Sophie probably tells you that. Yeah. Try and heal. Don't overdo it. Yeah, some people that have either bad posture or neck problems or whatever. Yeah, it probably is a neck thing for that to happen. Fair enough. Nice one. Side sleeper with a pregnancy pillow. You mean Sophie? Have you ever heard of the Namal tribe? They reside on the Vanuatu and breed pigs. Yeah, I've heard about them. They also hunt anything that moves. Their body comp is outstanding, even better than the Maasai IMO. Yeah, as I said, I've heard about them. I don't know a lot about them. I did look once for a bit of research, but I wasn't able to find much. There was some old colonial stuff, some French stuff that there was about them, but there wasn't like actual good research that I was able to come across on them in that regard. So if you know of any, Tom, please just leave me a title of book or study or whatever on, and yeah, I'll look into it. Be interesting to find out. Yeah, a lot of the islanders, because remember, a lot of the islands pretty much are devoid, they're sandy. They're the outcrops of volcanoes, and they're just sandy. They don't have much vegetation other than palm trees and stuff like that. They don't have deep soils. They're not really good to plant or grow anything on most of the islands in the Pacific. So when the Polynesians moved around, they took pigs with them. So a lot of those pigs are from Taiwan, Asiatic pigs, and they brought them over, and pretty much that and fish was the key thing, and the other one was coconut. I mean, some of them will consume up to 50% of their intake coming from coconut products. So and they seem to be able to tolerate high levels of salicylates as a consequence. I'll look it up. Thank you. Could oxalate cause primary rheumatoid syndrome? Sally Norton says it and says that rumen is not uncommon amongst people with oxalate poisoning. Now, and I have heard that this condition is associated with oxalates. I'm not convinced that, I think that it's just basically an association, and I think it just exacerbates the condition rather than anything else. There's a number of conditions that are associated with oxalates. They just get, and these people have a greater, it's more exacerbated. Some derangements, some physiological derangements can actually increase the production of oxalate. So is it the actual disease or the syndrome, or is it just an association? It's really hard to tease out. On that one, I'm not convinced either way. I'm not saying she's wrong, but I'm not saying she's right either. I'm not certain, and there's not enough robust data to sort of go one way or another. There's a number of other conditions. That's not the only condition, but there's a lot of question marks on them. There's a lot of association. I mean, there's even association between oxalate and cancer. And some people say cancer, the oxalate drives cancer. I sort of beg to differ. I think cancer produces oxalate and uses it to basically attack its neighboring tissue in a metastatic state. I think it's a strategy that it uses to exploit the usage of oxalate. So if you can minimize oxalate in the tissue, the cancer cell, you impede in a sense, its ability to migrate, to move, to penetrate, to attack its neighboring cells, and try to steal resources away from them. That's I view it more like that, in a sense. So yeah, I'm not 100% convinced on some of those sort of things. At this stage, we know that there's definitely associations, but in order to prove causality, it takes a bit more evidence to be able to do that. But there's definitely a relationship, and so that should be a bit of a warning to all of us that oxalates are not something that we just ignore. And in our diet nowadays, people, in the past 50s and 60s and earlier, due to lack of refrigeration, people had seasonal plants and all that. The majority of food came, about 2/3 came from animal foods. Even the low Melinda people, they were doing well over 50% dairy, let alone other, eggs, fish and stuff like that. So yeah, the whole concept that we've ever done a very large plant-based, diet is just nonsense. There's very few populations that may have done it for a certain period of time. The only population that I can think that has actually done it for a considerable time, and even then didn't do it as a high, even the Indians in the subcontinent, they still use a lot of dairy products. It's like 50% plants, 50% dairy, and eggs and other things like that. So it's a vegetarian diet, but it's still not, like 90 or 80% plant-based, like some of these people claim. There's nowhere in the world, this is just nonsense, make-believe that certain people have come up with, completely ignoring a certain seasonality and people's eating behaviors. It's just nonsense. I'm not really convinced on, that this is in any way, definitely not causing the condition. There's a genetic base to it. All I believe is that it makes it worse. It exacerbates the condition. So yeah, association is not causation. We need to remember that, Pavel, and everyone else as well. I've got an angry parrot that keeps calling me a cocker of late, like obsessively. Just reminded. There is an oven, and it could end up on a skewer. Yes. Oh, you mean a human parrot? Oh, yeah. Just to let the F off. That's how you deal with human parrots. Anyway, all these about gyms and gyms and gyms. Thank you. That's a new twist. Well, yeah, tell them that. Tell them that. They like eating also vagoons. See the sort of reply you get, or the sort of what? That'll get their attention, especially. Is there anything that would recommend besides carnivore taurine to something with Parkinson's disease? Actually, taurine is one, and choline, taurine and choline, and phosphatidylserine, and phosphatidylcholine as well, are really, if you look at all the literature on Parkinson's, yeah, it's just get rid of the carbs and, taurine, phosphatidylserine, because actually phosphatidylserine affects some genetic pathways as well in some signaling. It doesn't turn off the disease, but actually affects certain pathways, which is really interesting. It does do it to other diseases, but not all diseases, neurological diseases, phosphatidylserine. So, yeah, I'd definitely be getting the eggs are fantastic for these sort of conditions, like Parkinson's. You need phospholipids. Get the phospholipids. If somebody's got Parkinson's diseases, a carton of eggs a day is much better than meds. Sounds good. Nothing like good eggs. Does coffee affect skin elasticity, hydration? I notice that when I get espresso, my skin goes pretty dry and flaky, and also happens when I drink milk. Interesting. It can. It usually is the other way around, but there can be. Normally, because it's got some niacin, and that niacin will eventually go through the salvage pathway, and then through the salvage pathway, the same one that the sirtuins and PARPs and go through. So this is the NAD sort of salvage pathway, and usually that is a metabolite that actually helps hydration. So yeah, some people, can affect them differently for a whole lot of reasons. It may be some sort of reaction as well. So hard to say, but it's not usually something that we notice in the majority of people, and definitely not with milk. So, so if you're having milk on its own and you're having those sort of reactions, I've got no idea what's causing it, because I've never come across any study or anything that actually shown that milk can have deleterious effects. It may not be optimal. You need other nutrients that slightly lower in iron and a few other things, so it's not optimal in that regard to only drink milk. But I've never heard of it causing like dehydration or anything like that, or elasticity. It's very high in the type of nutrients that actually help with skin elasticity and the regulation, like fat soluble vitamins that affect the regulation of matrix metalloproteinases in the skin. So, that's unlikely to be doing it. But yeah, the coffee, interesting. Maybe it's a reaction of some sort. I don't know. No idea. But I'd be flabbergasted if somebody's got genetics that are reacting to milk or milk proteins or something. I've never heard of that in my life. So there may be other things that you're doing synergistically at the same time. The best thing to do is take everything out, go meat only, and then bring things in until you see what's really the causing the reactions. Because association does not mean causation. So just because you're putting a whole lot of things in and then associating them, it may be a synergy of things. And so what you need to do is go back to a baseline and then bring each individual item in and see how it's affecting you. And then certain combinations that you've done, see how that's affecting you. It may be a combination, but I'd be flabbergasted if it was milk and coffee. You know, it is a diuretic and can cause fluid loss. That's true. And if you're in low insulin state, you could actually sustain more fluid loss, especially if you're not having one big bolus meal a day to raise insulin, and if you're not having a bit of taurine to regulate the fluids. That is a possibility, especially if you're drinking a lot of coffee. That can cause a loss of fluids. Yeah, it's a diuretic, so that could be it. But milk, yeah, no way. Yeah. But coffee, yes, it's a diuretic. So depending on what else you do, if you're not getting enough fluids, you're not fat adapted enough to produce enough metabolic water, all these things, there's so many factors that can be at play simultaneously. Anyway, due to bird flu, no free range is available here anymore. They'll use any excuse in the Netherlands, The next thing, they'll be locking you guys up. Do you realize that? Just keep that in mind. Coffee sub. Thanks, mate. I thought it was that. Fair enough. If you need to work, you need to work. It's always later. Thanks for being here anyway and for the tip. Not a problem, mate. Not a problem. Red Tento. You ever work with someone that has Marfans? No, I haven't in that regard. So, but, do leave me a comment specifically. What are your symptoms? And I'll look into it. So it's a connective tissue disorder. Okay. So Marfan syndrome affects the heart, eyes, blood vessels, and bones. Okay. And it's a collagen sort of thing from what I can see. Fibers that support the anchor of organs and other structures. Well, a carnivore diet should help with this because it does have the sort of nutrients. Fat-soluble vitamins would help. And I would say also in terms of protein folding, let's see. I know some disorders do have protein folding underlying conditions. Especially when they're collagen related, there's always protein folding issues. You have a protocol. Well, there you go. Marfan's protein folding protocol, cellular molecular studies, and Marfan syndrome mutations, protein folding. So there is definitely a protein folding thing here with this. Very interesting. The best thing for protein folding, taurine. That's the best thing for protein folding. It actually also can affect directly the DNA and actually tell so it could actually affect instructions. And this is definitely a genetic disorder. Yeah. Anyway, I'll look into it. I haven't heard of it before. Interesting. So you end up with a very long fingers and all sorts of things, I notice, in that image. So, yeah, I've never really looked at it. Okay. Do you end up with long arms as well, or that's not the case? It's just long. Yeah. I've been carnivore 4 years already, but always trying to improve. Okay. Yeah. Coincidentally, already up using 15 grams of taurine per day. I figured it out cause it. I really crave octopus. Yep, yeah, it is a good source. Yeah, it is a good source of taurine as well. Octopus, that's true. Okay, and you're seeing benefits, because I know that this has, from what I can see in these studies that I just looked here. And it actually, there's a whole lot. GBE, GF 12 and 13 regions, and fibrillin, which is part of that, that regulates some of the fibrosis and stuff like that, and that has a role. And I know that these actual things also can have certain regulation, even in cardiovascular disease and stuff like that. I know these because I've come across them before, and I know that taurine really does wonders for these exact things. So yeah. So I didn't realize this same condition also had interactions with these genes mutations. Okay, interesting. Very interesting. Oh, that's why, because it does say heart conditions as well. Makes sense. Yeah, that's why these genes, because they are related to heart conditions as well, and fibrotic tissue and derangements in collagen and stuff like that. Yeah, I've come across this sort of stuff. Yeah, this is the sort of stuff and also matrix metalloproteinases. I wouldn't be surprised if MMPs are also associated with this condition, because that's the other thing that needs to be dealt with, because what taurine does, it downregulates matrix metalloproteinase, and that actually prevents this degradation. And that's how stable plaque is produced. That's how I stabilize my own plaque in my own arteries with taurine, and I was, doing very high doses as well in those days to sort of reduce MMPs and stabilize plaque. Okay, interesting. Okay, I'll look into it. I'm intrigued. Okay, also, yeah. So it also has a relationship with the calcium ion channels, this condition. Well, taurine is a natural regulator of homeostasis of calcium, and is a sort of an ion channel blocker as well. A mild one, but it has an effect on that. So yeah, if all these things are related to the condition, then probably that's the best thing you can be taking. Anyway, keep me informed. I'm intrigued. I want to know how you're progressing. So most of your joints are held in by muscles and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd be interested to know whether leucine has a role as well. Yeah, you can email me. Yeah, go right ahead. I'd like a bit of a background. It's an intriguing. I've been mucking around currently with a mitochondrial sort of hypothesis as well. There's a couple of things, and I get intrigued with certain things that I don't know, and I have to know. It's a pathological thing that I've got, that I have to basically know and understand the ins and outs of something. It's just the way I am. That's why I'm a sort of an encyclopedia. It's just, you can come and ask me nearly anything. Nearly. I'm not God yet. Definitely not God. I don't know everything. So don't expect that. But I'm definitely intrigued. It's never heard of it. It's probably very rare as well. So obviously that's why I haven't heard of it. But, carnivore diet was probably the best diet you could be on. Yep, not a problem. Bjorn, how are you, mate? Anyone had success treating seasonal allergies with small amounts of raw local honey daily? Nah, doing it. No, mate. I know that that sometimes gargling in the mouth can actually help in that way. Certain things that are coming in, so it can actually help. Not a good thing to consume it, but a good thing to gargle with it or use topically, as I've talked about it. But definitely wouldn't consume too much of fructose in that regard. But yeah, it sort of seems, but also vitamin D plays a big role in regulating the immune system, and taurine plays a big role as well. And those sort of things I'd be more keen to use for those sort of ailments. But there's also different types. There can be also structural structural allergies and asthma as well. My younger sister had that, and after 10 months moving away from a vegetarian diet, consuming quite a lot of animal foods and taurine, pretty much she gave away the puffer and hasn't used it ever since. And she was still a smoker back then. She's given up smoking now. Took her a while, but anyway. But smoking had nothing to do with, her success. It's really the animal products. So probably smoking was just making it worse. So definitely associated with making worse, because it increases matrix metalloproteinases in the lungs. But fat-soluble vitamins, especially vitamin D, is the key one for regulating MMPs in the lungs. And that's why vitamin D is the most potent thing, having a good level of vitamin D to deal with allergies and pretty much lung disorders of most orders types. Good to have you here, mate. It's been a while. Remove the cancer oxalates is like taking their guns away. Yes. That's true. That is true with some of them. That's true. Not a problem, mate. He's probably already gone by now. It's probably already gone. What's your opinion on therapeutic oils like CBD and black seed oil? Are they beneficial? Probably CBD has some neurotropic benefits in that regard. I'd probably give black seed oil a miss. It probably has higher oxidative products and aldehydes. If not immediately, over time it will generate more. Anything extracted from a plant tends to degrade much faster. With CBD, as I said, it has seems to have some therapeutic things, but there are better things. An animal-based diet, taurine is actually, I believe, superior to CBD because it affects similar pathways, and choline as well. So I'd rather use those sort of approaches rather than using these sort of approaches where they do seem to have some side effects for some people. I'm not convinced on their ultimate benefits. They may have benefits for some people, some mild ones. Remember, plants are medicine and animal foods are food. So they may have, but we don't have enough research. But there also seems to be also a contraindication for some people with some genetics. It can make their condition worse. It's probably because it's affecting certain pathways. And unlike, these sort of things, substances affect like they have like medicine. This is the problem with plant compounds. And it's a plant compound. They tend to have this on-off, really bang effect. Where things like choline and taurine are also regulated. You've got taut receptors, like TAUT receptors, and choline has to go through certain types of enzymatic processes, which are rate limiting, which means that the body, once it has the nutrients, it will produce what it needs to regulate certain parts of, you know, the brain and the body and stuff like that, but it won't produce any more. Things like CBD do not have specific pathways to basically regulate the dosage, so to speak. You really have to play around with the dosages in order not to cause you problems. So it's a bit more hit and miss, and with some genetics it can be a problem. So yeah, I've got a lot of question marks in regards to that. I like things that the body can regulate, or things that regulate the body, like taurine, stuff like that, that, you know, even in high doses don't seem to cause any issues, not only in us, but also in other mammals. And the only condition is that some people have like a sulfur accumulating. That means they break down sulfur much slower, like Bart has, and they can actually fart a bit and stuff like that. It's not going to kill them, but they can use choline to methylate that excess sulfur and sort of deal with it much faster. So that's another option, but that's a small minority of people anyway. Okay, what do you think about Stephanie Keto Person's ideas about YouTubers all through promotes high-fat keto, but has an upcoming video about her ideas? I have to say, look, I haven't been following Stephanie Keto for some time now. Occasionally I might pop in and check something of hers and all that. I've heard her say all sorts of things. I think she's got a few ideas wrong. In regards to a number of things. She seems to have this attitude that protein is a problem, that carnivores are consuming too much protein. Sometimes they're not, and if she continues to promote that, you end up with a situation where people are doing these very high, low protein diets, very high, and then they have issues with their electrolytes. And she actually deals with a lot of her electrolytes. So like she's producing business for herself, where if you consume enough protein, you'll get enough taurine, which will regulate your ions. That means all your electrolytes, all the ions, not only those, all the minerals in your body, plus the fluids. And you shouldn't have those issues. If you eat enough protein also in one meal, you'll also get that insulin bump that will help also improve the regulation and holding on to minerals and fluids as well by the kidneys, which you need. And if you start telling people to consume smaller amounts of protein, or even smaller meals of protein, you're going to basically induce much higher ketosis, which is not indicated. You don't see it amongst tribal people. Even the Maasai that Mary Ruddock looked at, they were running at about 1 millimole. People do not run very high ketone levels in tribal societies. And I think that these excessive, they're fine for therapeutic purposes, but for the everyday person, they can create a number of other side effects. So I tend to think that she's, become, how can I say, a bit hostile towards protein is my sort of view. I mean, I tend to encourage people to eat a 1-to-1, more or less. Women a bit more fat and a bit less protein, but not a lot less. We're talking about 1.2 to 0.8 for men, for women, and for men 1-to-1 in terms of quantity. So, good levels of fat, but also good levels of protein. And I always say to people, you need protein. You definitely need protein, for a tissue. Depending on your activity, you may need some more, you may need some less, in that regard. But, but it depends on that sort of stuff. But that's how I would approach that conversation. I don't know what Bart's he probably may be touching on the protein issue, and her promoting for the general community a sort of a therapeutic approach of keto. She also tends to suggest that certain plants are required, which really they're not. because otherwise humans would have died out in the glacial periods. So, that's not a basis, an argument at all. So, and there's plenty of populations around the world that don't consume at all anything. Absolutely no plants whatsoever. They've been doing it over multiple generations without dying out. So show me one vegan society, not one exists. So I think it's the other way around. And the onus is on her to prove that we are wrong and the archaeological evidence is wrong, and some of these tribal societies, that there is some sort of magical reason why, or genetic basis for them and all our previous ancestors that doesn't exist today. So that's a tall order for her to be able to prove, which is unlikely. But she's making some certain assertions, and that's true. We'll see how it plays out with Bart. I sort of suspect I know where it's going to go. It's going to be the plants and the protein side and stuff like that, and the overemphasis on on ketosis is probably the three areas that Bart's going to sort of attack on or make an issue of, in a sense, which I sort of tend to agree with Bart on those points as well. Yeah, I think she's well aware of mine and Bart's in particular, and she knows Bart much better than me, his views on some of that sort of stuff. And, I sort of say to her, well, yeah, maybe should have, if she realised that Bart was a bit not happy with some of the stuff, maybe should have had a bit of a discussion with him, and sort of teased a few things out. Sometimes Bart is willing to have conversation with people, and they just ignore him or don't answer or don't call back because they just don't want to have the discussion. And I'm going, well, if you truly believe something, you should be able to argue that. And that's how it is. I mean, you guys remember when I had a conversation with Bart on PUFA. Now, I used to have the old paleo approach about, animal PUFA and pig and pork and stuff like that. I changed as I looked at the research. Bart had a bit of that as well. And then once we had the conversation, I provided him some of the evidence. He's a scientist, a man of integrity. He looked at it and said, "You're right. I agree." And that's what a person does. See, Bart didn't basically just say, he said, well, no, that PUFA stuff and animals is nonsense. I'm moving away from it completely. And he agreed with me on that issue. But I provided them robust evidence. Stephanie could do the same thing, but she hasn't. If you basically believe in what you're putting forward, evidence it. I always evidence everything that I argue and all that. Now, if people want to argue with me on a certain point, that's fine. I've got no problems. But I definitely won't be, and you probably hear me, sometimes I'll say, yeah, it's a hypothesis of mine. Nobody can actually slap me over the head for a hypothesis. Nobody can basically say I'm a charlatan because I've got a hypothesis or I make a speculation. I make it quite clear that it's a speculation. I don't say this is the truth, this is what you should do. I say it's a speculation. But when I've got robust evidence, I will quite clearly say I've got robust evidence that actually shows quite clearly that this isn't an issue or that isn't an issue or whatever. She needs to do the same thing, and she hasn't provided that. She's making arguments against the carnivore diet and making arguments in terms of the way some people eat, but without providing evidence for that. She's saying, well, I've got a whole lot of ends of one of some of my supporters. But as I've said to you guys before, if people are ignorant about calcium, remember the video that I did recently about, glucose and, rising in some carnivores, levels and stuff like that, GLP-1 and stuff like that, glucagon-like peptide 1 and things like that. And I cover the calcium issue, and there is 25% of people that have a calcium issue. If they don't get enough calcium, there is a different effect of GLP-1 compared to the other 76% of people. And that could also be an issue for people like Saladino or others, So I threw that out. I gave some proof, genetic proof, a basis for the argument, the posit that I was putting forward, which makes it very hard for people to argue against it, because they have to say, well, that this somehow magically gets around, something else exists that can get magically around this calcium absorption issue. Well, good luck trying to find something, because nothing exists. And that shows quite clearly that there is a pastoral effect on a proportion of the population. And so I was able to back up what I said with concrete scientific evidence, not arguments and opinions or views or ideology, nothing. Strong science that actually shows quite clearly a genetic base for what I was arguing. She's not providing that. And so I suspect that Bart will be spanking her on a number of those issues. Yes, anyway, she's had an opportunity to, and declined. And I think Bart now is going to take a different approach. Anyway, that's how he goes. He doesn't. One thing that Bart won't do is he won't. If people are saying things that are really, they don't have a basis for it, he'll agree with somebody that's saying the complete opposite, like I was saying on Poofa with him. And I actually said he came on my live stream and and at the same time he wanted to discuss it on live. So he didn't hide. I sort of didn't want to put him on the spot and said, look, we can have a private meeting, a discussion on it, and then we can have something later on. No, he said, no, right now. And that's how Bart is. Show me your evidence. And I showed him my evidence. And he looked at it and said, you're right. I agree. I put the arguments forward. I told him the research. I mentioned the videos, and I actually even emailed him some of the stuff, and he was convinced. That's how you do it. And Bart is a really honest gentleman. He's a gentleman. He's one that loves scientific integrity. And if you can put a really good argument with good solid evidence for something, he looked at it and said, you're right. Trace elements after 3 hours. You got to cook the damn thing for 32 hours. How can that be contraindicated? It's nonsense. And and some of the other stuff that I also provided him evidence showing, this sort of grass-fed, non-grass-fed, and different levels in the piglets. Some of the grain-fed had a better profile. How do you the argument is from the paleo community that one is superior to the other. Well, not always. So there's a lot of other factors, and that is the way you do it. And most others are not willing. They argue certain positions with spurious evidence or very weak foundations on what they're putting forward. And Bart's not going to sit back and continue people promoting contraindicated things, because people continue going to his channel and asking him, oh, this person said this, that person said that. And the same thing was happening. People were asking him, oh, Harry's saying this about Poofa. He's made videos about this of Poofa. So that's why he came on to the live channel, to confront me on the Poofa issue. Because we know each other for quite some time, and I actually had invited him as well. So, but the difference is other people, on the other hand, won't front up or won't argue their posit. If you've got a position, well, back it up with evidence. If you don't have evidence, all you have is an opinion. Stop then bagging other carnivores with an opinion, because you've got no evidence to back it up. And that's how it goes, So I'm very much in the same favor as that. I'm very critical of certain people. And me, I've, said I'll agree with certain people on certain issues, like one guy that was some guy that has a lawyer but has a medical degree and actually uses it for litigation purpose, and he was arguing stuff that he doesn't really know much about, prions and stuff like that. He didn't even understand the differences between the different the betas and alphas and their different folding, and one can be pathogenic and the other can't, you know. So this is the problem, you know. People think, oh, all this is bad, or all that. No, well, it's a bit more nuanced. And if you don't know that sort of stuff, why are you even arguing? It's, again, people hear things or whatever, and they just jump on a bandwagon. I investigate things. I just don't accept on face value. And neither does Bart. He's a scientist. I'm a citizen scientist, and I approach things in a very methodological way. I will research it. And if I'm not sure about something, currently somebody's been telling me about something about mitochondria, but they can't provide me any evidence. There's a hypothesis, but no evidence. So I've got certain positions about deuterium and also ROS, reactive oxygen species, within the mitochondria, both in terms of signaling and also effects, negative effects, depending primarily on ROS leakage out of complex 1. But the thing is, when it comes to that sort of stuff, that is established, well-established biochemistry and physiology. And I can back up really well what I'm saying in that. Now, the other person put this other thing about some interactions between different mitochondria, one on the surface of the other, and having an effect on the protein gradients. Now, zero research, zero proof. It's a hypothesis. But some people push it and say, oh, this is real. I go, well, where's the evidence? Zero. Now, I'm going to look in it out of intrigue. I'm always intrigued about things, even if, because there may be some other thing happening that they've missed. That's what intrigues me. But I'm not going to jump on any bandwagon with just little bits of data. I've got a lot of hypotheses that I think about. I think about the hypothesis about seed oils and the accumulated levels of deuterium inside the fat cells. And I did a hypothesis videos, got 3 hypothesis videos. But that doesn't mean I could be wrong, completely wrong on that. You know, because chylomicron remnants and chylomicrons come to the fat cells and they put in fat, and the fats come out. And so you can have a dilution over time as you have low deuterium fats coming in. So, you know, doesn't necessarily mean when you're going to have, when you're losing weight, you'll have a lot of, I said, you know, maybe, you know, and all that. It's a hypothesis. That's why it's under the hypothesis playlist. Could have some truth in it, but maybe not as well. So, but these are the sort of things, but we have to state these quite clearly. A lot of people don't. And so, yeah, that's where I think both me and Bart get a bit, yeah, because we know that there's a bit of bullshit behind that, and you really don't have robust evidence to argue that. If you do, well, you'd front up with it. I've been craving nutritional yeast, B vitamins in. I used to add my food, no opinion, not yeast, just B vitamins. Just get some B vitamins. That's pretty much it. You do have a 3-day turnover. And if you're doing a bit of alcohol as well, you're going to be depleting B vitamins like mad. So are you drinking? Most carnivores that drink usually have severe B vitamin deficiencies if they drink on a regular basis. Remember, you need B vitamins every 3 days, and if you're drinking, you need to take 2 before and 2 after in order to, because you use a lot of B vitamins as you detox the alcohol. Keep that in mind. It also will reduce your hangover the next day. G'day, Angela. Had a look at phosphatidylserine. Would you recommend supplementing it, or can you get enough from food? Look, if you're consuming eggs, quite a few eggs, and you're getting yeah, you should get a lot of these phospholipids, and you should be fine on that front. High doses are specific for certain neurological disorders. As I said, you know, specific types where you can turn off the genes, silence the genes. Now, for most things, you don't really need massive amounts. So, yeah, and since your circumstances aren't one of those, you would know because you would have major neurological issues and you'd have been diagnosed with something. So, no, I wouldn't supplement. No need. Just basically eat more eggs. They will be very, very beneficial for you in that regard. You may need a bit of taurine to help with hydration and retention and regulation of fluids. Plus, are you eating enough niacin rich foods like piggy and tuna? Because those niacin rich foods, some people require more than others. Genetics again. If your ancestors consumed more niacin rich foods, via the salvage pathway, they do produce more nicotinamide, which actually helps in holding onto hydration of skin hydration. So some people just go say, oh, I can't be bothered eating a lot of tuna and piggy and stuff like that. And I go, well, fine, just get a standard, get a standard B3 vitamin, which is this reduced metabolite, and that will help. That's what most people, it's even in the skin, the creams that they put on, this nicotinamide and retinol and all that are in them. So, yeah, try one of those, see how it works. So what do you say? Taurine did nothing for my skin. Well, taurine doesn't do nothing, doesn't hydrate your skin. It regulates the fluids, so skin is more the fat-soluble vitamins and things like the B vitamins that help more. It regulates ions and fluids and can sometimes help if people are being dehydrated. But from what I can see, if that's not helping, it's not a dehydration issue. It's probably a skin hydration issue that's completely different from a total body dehydration. So there you may need a bit more, B3 in a sense. Try B3 supplement. See how you go. I've had a number of women that have had a similar condition. They've taken B3 supplements because they don't want to eat fish or piggy, and tend to basically sort it out. And I know a lot of people in your part of the neck of the woods consumed a lot of fish. So they would have got a much higher niacin level, and so may require higher levels for good skin hydration. So give it a try. You've got nothing to lose. Yeah, Alex is from the Netherlands. Yes, the place where lockdowns are a regular thing. And if you're a farmer, you're stuffed. And one other thing, go the Dutch farmers. So anyway, need to throw that in. Thanks, Angela, for that. That's very nice of you. Okay, so that's the actual gene that I have to look up. Okay, I will look up that gene and find out. Sometimes I do look up genes, and sometimes I come across research in animals where they've defected the gene and then they found a way of turning it off. So I'll look into it. Some doctors have no awareness of these studies sometimes. So I will look into it and see if there's any research that shows any compound that can turn this gene off. Because that, over time, like a decade as your cellular turnover, could correct a lot of your problems. Be interesting. I mean, I don't know how many people on the planet Earth have this condition, but it does intrigue me. Because usually collagen yeah, these sort of things, derangements, I find interesting. So yeah. Yeah, interesting to hear how many underlying reactions doing. I have Gilbert syndrome and thalassemia, measured recently at lifespan is low at 42 days. Look, a lot of these syndromes do exist over multiple generations. We've been doing many inappropriate things, and a number of genetic disorders have emerged in the human species. So, now thalassemia was a protective mechanism for when it came to malaria. But do you realize I've actually done on actual some of that stuff information? Actually, taurine has an effect on the elongation of the red blood cells. Yeah. So it does have a bit of benefit with thalassemia. But Gilbert syndrome, I don't know enough about it in that regard. But from what I've heard, the carnivore diet does help with the condition. But I haven't had a chance to look into it sufficiently. And just give me a sec. I'll drink a bit of coffee. It's 8:16 here, and this is getting cold. I need a drink it. Oh, that's nice. I like the flavour. Yeah, I know. People have strange ways of. Anyway, let's get back to it. It's probably all those people going to the World Economic Forum. They're probably just taking with them a whole lot of they call yeah, just taking with them a whole lot of vials and infecting animals around the place. Oh well, you got to say something in that regard. These people are misanthropists anyway, by the way. So anyway, so yep. Okay. So it's sort of what I saw in that image, everything sort of wow. That must be painful or very uncomfortable at least. So your quality of life is far above my peers. I take no meds and enjoy high risk physical activities that the medical community says not to do. Okay. Also, calcium ion channel. Okay. Yeah. Well, taurine's going to help there. Yep. Send me an email. Give me a bit some additional info. That would be helpful for my sort of deep dive into looking in it. I will look into some genetics as well. There's bound to be some research out there. Yep. So you do drop in there. Just a Greek Adonis. Oh, thank you. I've been characterized as many other things, but not a Greek Adonis. They're all colourful, I can tell you. But definitely not that colourful. A good 1/5 of Bart's Discord, a ban from the Carnivore Woe Discord for talking about anything other that isn't zero carb, beef, salt, and water. Yes, Necro with Lukey rule like with an iron fist. Yes. Those militia, those meat militia people. Yes, keep them in line, Necro. It's funny, really. I'm a moderator expert on some group online and others. I'm banned from talking about drinking milk. Really? You got to be kidding me. You're banned for drinking milk. Oh, God. Are they for real? That would be funny. God, I'd be banned on all of them then. Yeah. Look, I love milk. So I'll have a big glass of milk as well in that regard. And yes. Oh, yeah, yes, egg yolks. I have had milk with egg yolks as well. Yes, definitely. Have to say I've done that as well with raw egg yolks and raw milk. Yummy. I actually also did do that as well. And the other thing also that I did put in, I put a bit of cream in there as well. And you should try it actually. Egg yolks, milk, and actually put a bit of cream in there. And it really sort of, and I ended up stirring it and making a sort of a very creamy, milky drink. It's sort of my yolk milkshake or something along those lines. I know it sounds weird, but it actually was, I quite enjoyed it. Actually, give it a try. Yeah, I know. Some groups just really out there. It's, and they still, some of them still believe in the old myths about milk, like the growth hormones, which there's no receptor sites that can actually use in our body. Another, the estrogen, which it's a couple of nanograms where we produce thousands, and it's not even the estradiol, but estrone, the weak form, and a whole lot of other things. IGF-1, yeah, a small bit gets through a sort of a metabolite of casein. I mean, really? I mean, God Almighty. Some of the nonsense that is believed out there, it wouldn't even make a blip, even in a fasted state. If you put that same metabolite, forget about the food, just the metabolite itself, it's so low, it would not even make a blip. It wouldn't even throw you out of basically autophagy. It's just ridiculous. The sheer shite that's actually on some sites, and it's all dogmatic. It's all ideological. And if you tell them, show me the evidence, they ban you. So you can't win even the conversation, even if you've got the evidence and they've got zero evidence, and usually is the case. So, yeah, one gives up. My 2 cents on that. I used it as at mega doses, no benefit whatsoever. Magnesium achieved the same spout of benefits as a fraction of the price. It's not going to add anything to the diet if carnivore. That's what I thought as well. Maybe it helps a few people that are on a standard diet. It may be, affecting some of the pathways, like the GABA sort of receptors and certain things like that, which a standard diet wouldn't really help with. But a carnivore diet definitely helps those pathways. So, and certain nutrients in animal foods also. So I can't see the why waste the money in a sense as well. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jonathan. Appreciate it. Your input. The idea behind consuming local raw honey is slowly desensitizing your immune system to the pollen you are allergic to. Makes logical sense. Oh, look, you can desensitize yourself to a lot of things. You can actually even desensitize yourself to certain toxins, cyanide and stuff like that. You can take small doses, and that means you can. So if, let's say, I think somebody killed somebody that way, where they actually took very small doses. They were a chemist. They knew exactly how much to take to tolerate it without killing themselves, and then they put in a drink that a quantity that they could actually now tolerate, but other people couldn't, and the person was able to drink from the same stuff. Other people witnessed it, killed that person, but didn't die themselves. So obviously, until somebody was creative enough to investigate, and I think that person may have said something to someone and slipped up, and that's how the person was uncovered. Otherwise, it would have got away. So you can actually, desensitize yourself to anything, absolutely anything. But in the end of the day, it's not something that I would waste my money on. It's got very little nutrition. And I mean, it's got some antiseptic properties, some of the properties in there that can help with, topically used for as an antiseptic, or, for those sort of purposes, as an antiseptic mouthwash. I've talked about all that sort of stuff in a recent video, but methyl glyoxal, basically. But that sort of stuff is also not a good thing in large amounts in the body, and honey has quite a lot of it. It's a good thing as for topical reasons, but not a good thing to put in the body in large amounts. Plus a lot of fructose as well, so it's contraindicated in that regard. And it was seasonal traditionally. And the Hadza, which Mary walked with, they actually consumed it in the honeycomb. And when you eat it in the honeycomb, you don't get a lot of fructose, or very small. There's a lot. Honeycomb's primarily protein and fat, a lot of it. And there's some in those small little pockets. And seasonally, it'll have a bit more. But still, you're not getting like a massive amount. It's a much smaller amount that they were getting. And it's just a treat now and then. It's not something that they have at home in a jar constantly consuming. Just wasn't happening. So it's a modern day food thing. And some people still have an allergic response to it. So I wouldn't waste my money or my time. And fructose is quite clear, like alcohol, will increase fatty liver. And you can take a couple of grams of choline to export that fat, but why bother in that regard? Anyway, oh yeah, that's the 1-to-1 ratio. Yep. I need over 6 pounds of meat just a day to poorly maintain my tissue. Look, people that have got a lot more tissue breakdown, and this disorder is probably causing some tissue breakdown. Yeah, you probably need more for that reason. I haven't investigated leucine, which is very critical for muscle protein synthesis, and maybe something to consider in terms of. And remember, don't worry about it as well. Lysine and glucine, leucine and lysine, are both very much ketogenic amino acids. So got nothing to worry about. Even in large amounts, at most they'll be converted into ketones. So nothing to worry about. They are basically exclusively in terms of that. So where we use lysine for certain ailments, like kids that have got little acne or whatever, or certain things like some reaction on their skin, you put lysine, things like that, cream topically. So that's those sort of things. Even consuming as, I don't like single amino acids. Leucine I don't have a problem with, but lysine I wouldn't actually consume as an amino acid on its own. In that regard, I just eat meat to get my lysine. On the other hand, topically, fine. But in terms of leucine from protein synthesis, I would, I'm not going to say, I know that from some other collagen-related disorders, leucine does help quite a bit and can improve things on that front. The other part is also arginine. Like taurine, also arginine improves vascularization, improves nitric oxide synthesis, which also helps with some of these disorders. But also, like taurine, also participates in protein folding as well. So it helps in protein folding to some degree as well. So, L-citrulline would be a good supplement in that regard, because it converts in the kidneys to arginine and then in the bloodstream to nitric oxide, plus can be utilized. Actually, arginine can go back to L-citrulline anyway as well. There is pathways there that can recycle that and salvage part of it, and as a consequence, use it for other purposes as well. So do consider those as well, because they are related to these sort of disorders. I'm definitely going to look into it. I'm just so intrigued. And when I get intrigued about things, I need to know how it all works. Especially a disorder that I never knew about. There's probably other disorders that I don't know about. You can't know everything. The more rarer, it's just, yeah. Yeah, it's usually you're not eating enough fat. You're not eating enough fat to create hydration from fat, metabolic water. And then if you're eating enough fat and not producing enough, it could be an issue that some mitochondrial inefficiency can be an issue as well at play. So a lot of things in that regard, but things to play around with. Yeah, I don't know whether he's actually consuming, maybe he's consuming that amount of grams as meat, and he's a bit confused because not all meat is protein. About 25% plus or minus, sometimes 24, sometimes 26, sometimes as high as 27, but on average 25. So maybe he's getting a bit confused about the two. We're not talking about meat. Meat has plenty of water and other things, and there's only 25% protein, more or less, give or take. Can be different, and also how much metabolic water you can produce by upregulating the more water you consume, you down-regulate your you down-regulate your antidiuretic hormones. The less water you consume, you upregulate your antidiuretic hormones. But if your body's not used to producing a lot of water, you can actually get some dryness. I did it initially, and then over time, my body compensated and started holding on and improving hydration. So I went through stages, a bit like Laszlo Boris, who is the guy that actually consumes no water like me, very little. And if he does have some, he has low deuterium water for his coffee. That's about it. So, and I'm not suffering any dehydration issues. I can do a dry fast for 3.5 days and still not have an issue. So then go back to my normal stuff. So I can produce water internally, that is. So there's a whole lot of, it's more nuanced, and in terms of diuretic hormones and stuff like that. Depends whether it's been tested. Some glacial water can be very low in deuterium. Some, because it can be contaminated, may not be. there's a lot of variations. So, and there's also different parts of the world seem to have different compositions, and also the height as well. But it varies. Like if you look at glacial water coming from the French Alps, and that they're slightly higher, and they have a lower deuterium level than the glacial water coming from Italy. But on the other hand, if you go to certain parts of Siberia, there's water there that's actually even lower than glacial water. Yeah, so it's complicated. There are other factors that are actually affecting at play the actual deuterium depletion effect. So, and there are some things that we don't fully understand either. You know, Russian scientists that went into certain areas in Siberia, they came across a number of native people in those sort of areas. They found that these people had very long lives. There were, you know, disproportionate centenarians in those villages in that region. And the only thing that they found that was different compared to villages in a different region that were related, eating similar things. So they couldn't work out the diet, lifestyle was similar. They just could not work out what the hell it was that actually was making these people live longer. And those people that were related, a bit like a Western A price thing, you know, one being close to foods of civilization, the other not. But you know, so they actually found one thing that was different. Well, that's what they were looking at for a needle in a haystack. And then they looked at the water quality, and they started analyzing it for all sorts of things. And then they came across that. And then they realized that there was an obscure study done in 1962 by a Russian academic on deuterium, and deuterium in terms of collagen and deuterium in terms of the mitochondria. And then they put two and two together and go, oh, this may be it. And that's how they sort of worked it out. So that was very interesting. So it's quite clear that deuterium depleted water, or deuterium depletion, or taking in a bit like the ultimate animal that is a deuterium depleting machine, as I call it, and also all its intake of the stuff that it gets is low deuterium. Its hump is low deuterium fat. It's the source of water from cactus is low deuterium. And so all these sort of things, it's a low deuterium animal. And it doesn't show its age very well. That's why there's that old Arab saying, if you're going to go alone in the desert, never take a camel, take a horse, because you can tell the horse's age. You can never tell the camel's age, and it may die on you, and then you'll die alone. So that's an Arab saying. So there's some truth in all these sayings. Yeah, look, it's interesting. Unless there's some glacial waters in some regions, as I said, has been tested, not all of it. If you can actually get do you know any friends in academia or in a university that you can actually give them a sample and ask them to test it? I mean, if you come across like low deuterium glacial water, mate, if that's the first thing that I would do. I'd try to find out. I think Laszlo Boris, he's got a website as well with Colin. What's his last name? I forget that other guy. He's a doctor that works with him and does the keto stuff for NASA for long journeys. They're trying to make low deuterium keto type approaches for NASA. Long endurance into space to protect them against the ravages of space, radiation, stuff like that. So he's sort of involved in providing them with ketogenic foods and low deuterium approaches and stuff like that to protect the astronauts in these long flights. Next fortnight, when I have the live stream, remind me. I'll look it up. I'll try and find the details, because I vaguely remember him talking about that they had some sort of test. They could actually check to find out And I don't think it was very expensive either. They may have even produced a kit by now. So you don't have to send stuff in. They just send you the kit and you test it yourself. And if you can find, glacial water that's low ppm, man, oh man, take it home. I mean, even if you're not sure whether it's whether there could be bacteria or something, maybe a problem. Just boil it, boil the stuff, and then let it cool down and store it. You got cheap low deuterium water. Bloody hell, going to save yourself a lot of money, and that's going to be beneficial rather than regular tap water. So I'll find out, because I know there are other people that live close to glaciers around the world. That could be useful, that information. So I'll look into it now that you've made me think about it. Anyway. Oh, the interview? Yep. Yes, go and see the interview if you haven't seen it. On the Evian bandwagon, like Harry. Fair enough. Yeah, look, it's the advantage of, unlike tap water, the advantage of Evian water is it's very high in trace minerals, like all alpine water. All glacial water is very high because it actually rubs against, the mountainous sides and actually picks up minerals. So it's very high in minerals. I had to, because I was using before my pot to warm water, regular water, not a problem. When I tried to put the Evian water, I would get all these, mineral buildups around the element. And it stuffed up my element because it was already a bit iffy. And I said, no, bugger it. Now I use a pot. I know it takes a bit longer, 15 minutes to boil the water. Yeah, okay. But my pot is full of minerals around when I actually empty the water into the cup, in the coffee cup. I look at the actual thing and it's just full of minerals. Why? For the simple thing that it's got a lot of minerals. And anyone that wants to use Evian water, put in a pot, boil it, and then put it in a cup, and you'll see all these that mineralization around. You got to clean it because you don't want it sticking on the pot and causing discoloration, because it will. So you have to remove the trace elements, but it's got a lot of trace minerals. So you don't even need to forget about supplementing trace minerals. Forget about, you're going to get, if you drink that water, you're going to get good amounts of trace minerals. So yeah, so you're going to get good mineral. It's you can consider it a mineral, not only water but a mineral supplement. So not only water for coffee, but a coffee that's providing you with a mineral supplement as well to boot. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, why not? Interesting. Yes, twice in a day. You can't get enough of me. Is that what you're saying? You cute little thing. You can't get enough of Uncle Harry. Yeah, nah. Yeah, that's the only thing. I think in Europe you can actually find bottled stuff, but you can't find it in Australia, which is really an annoyance. I do consume a bit of choline to methylate xenoestrogens in that regard. So it is it is, yeah, that is the downside. I agree. So, and I'm not arguing that that's not a potential issue. It may be. But if you're going to use any bottled water, and I just use, about less than 2 cups a day for my coffee. So I'm not getting a lot. Let's put it that way. Good for him. I tend to be, look, Bart's a high functioning autistic person, and he tends to be a bit more blunt in his approach. It's just his nature. I tend to be the middle child, so I tend to be a bit more diplomatic. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to compromise on what I believe. You see me. If I believe something, I will slam you, and I will basically put anyone in their place. I'm not going to agree with pseudoscience to keep people happy. But I have a different approach to it, in a sense, you could say. A bit of a softer approach, but I'm quite firm about if something's wrong, and I'll tell people they're wrong quite clearly, in a blunt way. I always have. It's as my brother Sean says, you've got no filter, Harry, and I don't. If I think that something's wrong, or somebody's wrong, or something's bullshit, I'm going to call them out. But I'll do it in a more diplomatic way, but I'll still call them out. That's the only difference. So I don't have a filter because, honesty doesn't require a filter in my book. People that want to massage the truth have a filter, and if you can't, if you basically are dishing out bullshit, well, expect to get a soft tongue lashing from me, a severe one from Uncle Bart. Uncle Harry's a bit more softer, but he'll be firm as well and make sure that that your bullshit is not going to get much traction. Simple as that. Angela, thank you. Just noticed. Oops. God, is that how far behind I am? Oh, shit. I'm way behind. Harry to hop on Harry's bandwagon show this morning. Great info, great fun, great generosity of spirit. Thank you. You're welcome, Angela. Thank you for the 20 euros from the beautiful Ireland. Oops. Now I'll find my spot. It's always the case. Drink a bit of coffee. Jonathan as well jumped in, so I better go down there before I find my spot, because then I'll have to find my spot again. Thank you, Jonathan, to support your streaming expenses. Thank you very much. Yes. Luckily, the Zoom cost didn't go up this year, which was lucky. I looked at I go, okay, that's okay. Yeah. Together with some donations and together with people's, with some of the, you get a bit with advertising and stuff like that. It's sort of covering most of those expenses. I did get some new software as well to be able to edit some of my stuff better. It does have a number of features. I'm thinking about how to play around with those features. So I haven't started using them. So I'm sort of containing myself. I need to learn the software. I've already used it in the past, but I need to learn some of the advanced features, is what I'm saying. So, yeah. And they had it on special, so half price, about 100 odd it was. So I bought it, and I said, yeah, I'll buy it. I bought a license. I know Lama said, well, you could have got this free one. But this is a good one. It's a lifetime. I got a lifetime license for it. It's got a number of really nice features, and it's got a lot of conversion stuff. So it's got a lot of capabilities. So I said, yeah. And it's got a number of sort of features where you can actually have certain things appearing and disappearing, and sort of things that sort of animate in a certain way. I just need to learn those things now to try and actually play around with my videos in a sense, and give them a bit of style in a sense. So we'll see how good I achieve that. I'm not going to go overboard, don't worry, because that's not I don't like that either. If it becomes too much whiz bang stuff like that, then it's more like a circus rather than anything. It's just using maybe some features that can enhance the viewership, stuff like that. So we'll see. Primarily, I usually use it to normalize the audio, because biggest problem is sometimes you've got audio on the videos that you actually, and then you've got this audio and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes one can be quiet, the other one can be loud, and things can be out of whack in a sense. And then you go, oh, it just doesn't sound right. It's one part's too loud, one part's too, and so putting it through and normalizing it sort of fixes that problem, and then you can release it and people can hear it at, they can set their audio that they want and they can listen to everything. And so sometimes you need to normalize the audio, and that's what I do. I'll normalize the audio. So everything that's heard, whether it's me or anything else, it'll be at the same audible level to be comfortable with people. So yeah. I'm trying to get a few things here and there improved and that sort of stuff. So yeah, playing around. Still waiting for the new. I haven't bought. I do intend to upgrade my PC to get a bit more grunt, because this is a bit slow in processing things. Takes a few hours. I need something a bit faster. So the Dalai Lama, or no. He's a guy in Germany that lives in Germany. He calls himself Lama. He sometimes appears on my channel here and there. He does appear now and then on the Zoom sessions. He's got another nickname as well, but he doesn't want me to tell anyone. So he does appear with that as well. I know it, but he doesn't want anyone else to know, so I can't tell you, Nathan. I'd have to kill you if I told you. So yeah, everybody's got their little quirks. So yeah, here's the one that's doing the 30 grams of taurine. Yeah, interesting chap with an experiment. Anyway, God, he's lucky he doesn't have the genetics of Bart that retains sulfur far more, and he can't do a lot of sulfur. He'd be, oh God, he'd end up ponging out the whole of Germany under those sort of circumstances at that level. So it's an interesting experiment, even though I'm discouraging him. So yeah, we'll see. I've told him if he gets any warning signs to back off immediately, because it doesn't last in your system for very long. Once you cut it out completely, it drops within a day or two to nothing, back to baseline. So it's not something that really is a problem, even in high amounts. But still, it's not ancestral, and do you need to take that, even with the experiments in other animal models, it's not that level. But anyway, it's very, in some rare conditions, that's like severe burns and other things like that, but he doesn't have that. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. People have their little proclivities and little things that they like to do. So anyway, okay, fair enough. The earlier stuff that we must have talked about. The CRISPR for common genes is done, but you know how things go with cures not making money. Yeah. Look, it's CRISPR does have some issues. I mean, as I said, like everything, there is dual purpose, can be used for nefarious purposes. CRISPR, in terms of people doing evil things, but it's like anything, uranium can be used for bombs, but it can be used for generating electricity, like anything. So it's interesting to see how that there's still a lot of things about where there's a lot of concern with CRISPR is also for these genetic disorders. In your case, is okay, you swap in and swap out. Is it just that gene? The concern is there may be other genes that may have been affected that are also involved in signaling. And if you take out a gene and change that, you may have certain signaling. Could that create other problems? And so there's a lot of, at the moment, because we don't know enough about a number of disorders and all the implicated genetics. We may know some of the prime ones, we may not know some of the secondary ones, or some of the ones that are involved in signaling. And there could be potential for, unforeseen side effects, is how it's put. And that's a legitimate concern. It definitely is a legitimate concern when it comes to the use of CRISPR. I think we need to learn more about the human genome and have a better understanding of how things work before we start playing God, in a sense, with CRISPR and even with genetic disorders like yours. I understand that, you, like, if I was in your shoes, I'd be, I'd be wishing, for something like that very quickly. But at the same time, there are risks with things like that as well. So, yeah. Look, I hope for, in your case that somebody does take up the research and does additional research, stuff like that. They're not ready yet, but it's worked on rats, mice, dogs, monkeys. Won't allow human trials despite many willing volunteers living a life not worthy of calling living. Yeah, there's a sort of ethical considerations and stuff like that as well. But if it's working for monkeys, now how long are those monkeys? Have they done randomized trials on the monkeys for a certain period of time to see the outcomes and any side effects and stuff like that? So short-term periods, anything may work. Long-term, there may be other unforeseen consequences. So I still think that there has to be, and you can do it because, these sort of animals have a shorter lifespan. So you could do randomized control type trials with these animals to see outcomes in that regard. But it looks promising if they're getting good results with all these animals without any obvious side effects at this stage. It looks promising. It's going to be interesting to see for some of these disorders which countries are going to basically move on that front and which aren't. I understand if you're in that position, they aren't over 10 years on the month. They aren't over 10 years on the monkeys, but all researchers went mute some years ago, as I doubt we will see anything ever again until CRISPR is monopolized and commonplace. Yeah. Look, maybe that's there may be that issue of the monetization as well. But you can still make money by using CRISPR as a service. So it doesn't necessarily, you don't need to have a patent if or monopolization on it. You could still use it as a service and charge for the service. But maybe you can't charge enough money. Maybe that. I don't know. It's when it comes to money, it can be a problem with the way things go about being done. I understand if I was in your position, I'd be wanting the intervention as well, because just looking at that condition and the sort of what people may be suffering, I can understand why people would be, especially if they're not on a carnivore diet, they actually are having worse outcomes. As you're on a carnivore diet, you're having improved outcomes, you're eating more protein, and that's helping slow down these sort of derangements. Most of these other people would be on a sad diet and probably have much more severe outcomes. And so for them, it's probably, Okay. Yeah. Look, as I said, once I look into it, I'll know more about it, what's happening, what the protocols are, what the therapies are, and all that. But I'll be looking at that, just as a general interest. But my main focus will be on scientific literature. What is out there, and what are the pathways? I'm really interested in the pathways. I bet there's a lot of pathways that a lot of these academics have missed. You talk to a doctor about taurine and they got no idea. And there's many other out there. I talk about a number of different things. They look at you like a stunned mullet, like as if they're an animal with headlights looking at them. They got no idea. And you go, when was the last time you ever read any physiology or biochemistry literature? You just shake your head and walk away. You go, what the bloody hell? Yeah, that's the current world we live in, unfortunately. That is the current world we live in. Anyway, we'll move through because we're getting close to 3 hours, and I'm going to pull the pin, so to speak. I do have work tomorrow, and I do want to work on something. So that's the other thing as well. Yep. Unless they can make a big quid. Yeah, and yeah, I can understand. Yeah, the drugs, it's like cancer. Chemotherapy, plenty of money on that. Drugs, plenty of money on most things. Actually coming up with any viable cure. Yeah, a one-time treatment. So there's not as much money. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. Anyway, supplementation nice and would be good. Do never go over, and this is, I know people talk about NMN. If you go over 1 gram or close to 1 gram, you can impede gluconeogenesis. You can affect a number of biological pathways. Not a good thing. These crackpots out there, longevity crackpots, causing a lot of other issues downstream. So no, you should never go over 300 milligrams of any type of niacin of any sort, both dietary and supplemental. So keep it below 300 or 250 and below. So if you get a supplement, you can get around 250 of niacin, and not the slow release stuff. It's the stuff that causes flushing, because that's the only one. The slow release stuff can damage your liver. Not good for your liver long term. So, but I would rather try and get it from actual foods. Pork and tuna are very good sources. Get it the natural way. Up syndrome. Good to see you, mate. So unexpected for Joe to go so downhill, repeating the same words as Varys. Yeah, yes, very much. Old people should reduce protein intake. Yes, there's nothing like sarcopenia and go fat heavy. Blah, blah, blah. Yes, definitely. Yes, we need to encourage sarcopenia in the elderly. We can't have elderly running around robust and potentially doing all sorts of things. That's not on. Definitely not on. Unacceptable behavior from the elderly to be consuming too much protein and actually being able to run around like in a more youthful way. Unacceptable. I agree with you. Up syndrome. Yes, blah, blah, blah. Yes, definitely. Yes, he's definitely gone down the crackpot hole, so to speak, and lost his way down there. Varys is definitely a supreme crackpot. One of the top echelon of the crackpot society. Elias. I know a lot of people who said they got banned from and talked about other things and asked around in Barts. Some of them will tell you they got banned. Oh well, people make all sorts of stories. You know that, Nicaragua. If you've been a long time in this social media landscape, you know that is definitely the case. Yes, that is definitely the case. I've tried eggs and yolks, liquid ice cream, great weight gainer. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, that as well. Yes, that definitely as well. But yeah, cream, with eggs and with I know ice. I've done that as well. Ice in summer. Actually, now that you tell, I've got ice. Actually, it's a bit late now. Oh well, tomorrow. I think I'll be doing that tomorrow. Damn, it's 9 o'clock. Anyway, done for the day. Over 5 minutes. Anyway. I'll quickly look and just see any other. Yes, unfortunately, he seems to be heading. Yeah, seems to be heading a bit down that way as well, so which is very unfortunate. Let me see any major other question that people that I haven't touched on. Most of the stuff is standard, stock standard sort of stuff that people ask or know about or have actually talked about. G'day, mate. How's it going? Hello, Harry. What do you think about Indian vegetarian population, the genetic adaptation, the way of eating, asking, starting a carnivore diet, unsure how I'll react? You should do fine. I know a number of Indian people. I've got a couple of friends, even a work colleague. And some of them have actually shifted and started eating more meat, especially my work colleague, and not an issue whatsoever. So, I mean, we've got millions of years of adaptation to animal food, so it's not going to be an issue whatsoever. Traditionally, vegetarians in India consumed quite a bit of dairy products, eggs, and plants in combination. So it was a bit more, and some fish as well in some areas. So it was a bit more nuanced and in that regard. Now, it wasn't optimal, and that actually a 1930 study that was done years ago on railway workers actually showed the ones from the north that ate more animal products lived longer and had less disease. So even back then, but now the biggest problem in southern India and India generally is that in the past you guys used to use ghee, which was clarified butter, which is what you use for cooking. Then in recent years, you've replaced it with seed oils. 85% of your cooking oils are seed oils, and they are very toxic industrial oils, and they have exacerbated the health problems in India in recent years. So where before people were slightly under eating because of, things, it was much harder to get enough nutrients and stuff like that. So under eating, very rarely engaged the Randall cycle because they were physically active, doing heavy work most of the time. Only the rich would get disease under those circumstances that sort of tended to eat more things, mixed and stuff like that, plus tended to be more sedentary. But now the whole population, more office workers, more refined, excess energy, less activity, physical activity, all these can exacerbate health problems. Every human on the planet can do animal foods. The question is, if you're coming from the south, from India in general, you would have been exposed to a number of years of dairy, which means that you may also require some level of dairy as well in your carnivore diet, especially if you've got certain genetics that predispose you to poor calcium absorption. You should know, if you cut out calcium, do a carnivore diet, and you start feeling heart palpitations and stuff like that, it means you've got those genetics that require. I've done a video recently covering, which is sort of talks about blood sugar and the carnivore diet. It's a recent one that's done, but it does talk about GLP-1 and also the calcium angle that certain people have a genetic where they're on a carnivore diet, their blood glucose will go up, and it goes up for the simple reason it has to do with calcium. So that is due to certain genetics. So that's another thing that you need to keep in mind and play around with. So I hope that explained most of the stuff. Take care, and thanks for being on board. I haven't seen you before, so you must be new. Thanks for subscribing and supporting. Now, quickly see. Angela goes, "Oh, Harry, don't go." Anyway, what's Necro saying? The dude that does Harry clips, he told me that he was banned from for talking about plants, and he's laughing as he watched me talk in here about WOE bans. Okay, fair enough. Oh, he didn't tell me that he'd actually been banned. Fair enough. Such is life. Such is life. You know, that's what happens. Yeah. Oh, g'day, Kate. I didn't even notice you there. You snuck in under the radar. Hi all, finally made a broadcast. So you're a bit further up here where are you? There you go. There you are. Or below that. Press the like button. Thanks for that. But you were must be slightly higher. It's always hard to find. Or was it further down? Oh well, I give up trying to find things. There it is. God damn. Got it. All over the place, Kate. All over the place. Yes, a lot of Indians are now having seed oils. They try to push it as vegetable ghee. Do they? Oh, God almighty. Vegetable ghee. Nothing of the sort. It's toxic garbage. And it's causing a lot of issues, health issues in India. And Mike, what is there? Hi, Harry. Is farm salmon okay as a substitute for wild caught salmon nutritionally? Thanks. Yep. Yeah. Look, it's going to be better than carbs. Let's put it that way. And it's not too bad. Even that red pigment that's actually astaxanthin. They actually give them additional astaxanthin that they get from krill. So yeah, they just feed them certain things from other seafood, and they make them slightly redder. And that astaxanthin, you know what it does? It refreshes the fatty acids. It actually prevents oxidative stress, because when a fish moves through water, it actually undergoes it's under a lot of stress from the pressure in the water. And it needs that strip that goes right around the middle part of the fish, that red stuff, that's astaxanthin. That is a potent antioxidant and electron donor that stabilizes PUFA, the omega-3s in the actual fish itself. So, yeah, that's I've talked about it before as a biohack. If you're on holidays and you may be exposed to, let's say, things you shouldn't be exposed to, you know what I mean, like the wrong type of oils that things are cooked in restaurants. So that's a little thing that can actually sort out things like stabilizing and refreshing those fatty acids. So not only electron donors, but resets them in the right carbon type format, the formation, the sort of structure. So yeah, it has some really interesting Swiss Army knife features in that regard. The problem is you don't want to have too much, because it can bioaccumulate. That's why even people when on the holidays, I usually say take one tablet every 3 days, because it degrades and gets out of the system by then, and then you can take another one. So that's the approach to take. So when you don't take it on every day, even though it says on the pack, ignore that completely. That's just nonsense. That's marketing. They want to sell you more. Yes, there's a certain rate of turnover. Anyway, I am going to blast out of here. Yep. What was the other one? There was a guy using that looked like Tibetan alphabet. Okay. Yeah, yeah. You're doing half a pound of fam rib a day, ATP, all good. Yeah, look, it's not. There's no issue whatsoever. It's the old argument with the grain fed and all that sort of stuff. People, it's overblown. The amount of money you pay for the top end and the amount of nutritional difference you get is not substantial enough to justify it. So it's in the about tab on my channel. So right at the end, the about, there's a little thing there that actually has it. Anyway, yeah. Do biohacking. Occasionally talk about plants, all of them banned. Oh, dude, that are like Harry, that read studies, do biohacking, and occasionally talk about plants, all of them banned from WE Discord, but is it a sanctuary for science talk and dirty carnivore? Yes, he is. Yes. The actual Discord. Necro Kitty, can you, just for those who may not know the link to the Discord, just before I shut down, you don't mind putting a link to the Discord so people can go there and talk with fellow carnivores about all sorts of things and about, the politics in the carnivory space. Yes, that's true. That's true. That would be helpful. I always ask people, because only moderators can put stuff. Thank you, Necro Kitty. And what people can do is they can put the number of the PubMed article, and then I can look it up. It really helps that. Yep. And that's an invite link. So just so you know, to be invited to Discord and then chat with fellow carnivores without worrying about being whacked over the head by some other people. Anyway, be polite, be respectful while you're there, and interact and learn some stuff. So I am blasting out of here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I appreciate your support. Without your support, this channel wouldn't exist. It's not enough, having knowledge is one thing. Being able to find enough people to disseminate it is another thing altogether. So I appreciate your time, your patience, and your support. Thanks, Dean. Tom, always a pleasure, mate. And Kate. Yeah. My throat is starting to dry out from all that talking. See, Alex, always a pleasure. Red Tanto, definitely thank you for being here. And take care, mate. So, Necros, our goal on Barks is that we help people get better. We don't care if they are perfectly carnivore or not. Thank you, Necro. And I am out of here. Aaron, see you. Good night, everyone. And see yous all. You're welcome. Thanks for your support. See you, Nick. Late. Dusters, mate. Dusters. See yous all.